everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Gameable Audio, a VGM podcast. I am your host, Kristoffer Schenström, and what is this about 200 episodes? This is episode 43 of Gameable Audio, and in total, with this podcast, this is also the 200th episode. Yeah, a little bit of champagne to celebrate this special occasion. No, but for this episode, I have so much things in store. I have no clue how long this episode will be. I'm just guessing. Usually when I do these episodes alone, it usually spans around 30 minutes together with the music, going through the composers and so on. But this is a special occasion, so I've really unpacked a lot of songs for this week. We have a total of 16 tracks that we're going to listen to. As per usual, of course, I'm going to try and bring up the composers and everything, but since this is also a more of a celebration for me, I'm only gonna do a handful of information on the developers, the games, and actually talk a little bit more about the games themselves. And yeah, we will basically start up a little bit from the beginning. So, when it comes to Gameable Audio, or this podcast, so to speak, I actually started out this podcast back in 2017. This was the month of September, so actually we're really getting closer to a 7-year anniversary as well, together with this 200th episode. It's insane with all the things that has gone by through this time. And we will basically make this podcast episode a little bit of a journey. We're going to listen in on a couple of older episodes. We're basically going to listen in on one new episode for each year that I've been active and doing the podcast in order to just see where I come from and where we're at today. Also for this episode, I reached out to everybody online, social medias and so on, and asked everybody if they wanted to give a little bit of a memory turn back for me to hear a little bit about you guys, what do you think about the podcast, and what type of journey you've gone through while listening in on this. So testimonials, basically. People could either have sent it in by email for me to read, or people could have sent in some audio clips, which I also gotten. I am just super happy that I get all the support that I am getting, either through Patreon or people just spreading and sharing the episodes. But, as I said, we're going to start from the beginning, and there's no other better way than to start out a video game podcast, not by talking for 40 minutes, but let's actually dive into the first era of the Gameable Audio. And yeah, we're traveling back to 2017. We're also going to talk a little bit about earlier consoles for me as a kid as well. So this is a journey for everybody, basically. Starting out this week with Nintendo Entertainment System, and this is the song F-Zone, or Zone F, from the game Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. I really hope the first track of the week had you swinging there with Zone F from the Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. The OST here was composed by the Japanese Harumi Fujita, and the game was developed by the Japanese company Capcom and released on the NES in 1990. The game here also was also included in the Disney Afternoon Collection, actually, which was released back in 2017. This collection added a lot of these Capcom titles, such as DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale, Darkwing Duck, and so on. I don't exactly remember. I think it's the first and second Chip 'n Dale game, first and second DuckTale, and then I think it was Tailspin as well. Don't quote me on that one, but there's a lot of amazing games in this afternoon collection nonetheless. I wasn't too much fan of the controls because they felt a little bit more clunky than the old clunky controller we had on the NES for some reason. I don't know, I definitely just get nostalgic and really just think like, hey, I wanna rather play this on the original NES than on my PS4. But it is what it is. No, we're starting out here in the Nintendo era. This was also one of the first consoles that I remember back in the day. We actually owned one ourselves, bought it actually on an auction. My father did. I was attending together with him. And the two games we actually had with this console was not Chip and Dale. It was Super Mario, or Mario Bros, and the Ghouls and Ghosts game, which is tedious. So you had actually two hard games for this little child called Little Chris in this time and story. No, but back in the day also when we had the NES, purchasing a game at this point in time was super expensive. So rental was the way to go. And I remember my parents and I went to the video game store. I usually tend to remember it as the wine cellar, the Swedish name for wine cellar, Vinkällaren. But it might have been like a store with video games and movies and so on, a rental place that was like close by, because as I remember going there at a later point in time in life, there wasn't any sort of rental there. It was just a lot of wine, just like the wine cellar should have been. So I might have been mistaken. I don't actually remember the actual name of this rental place. But when we went there, I just loved walking around, looking at these red cases with the box art on them. So they kind of looked like old VHS cases almost. And it was just a blast going around, looking at them, looking at the backs, see what game it could be and so on. And by the end of these times, we usually rented a game or two and we played it during the weekend. So I really enjoyed this. And Chip and Dale was one of those games that I really liked to play. When I was younger, you could play 2 players, and I usually tend to say for just the fun of it today that Chip and Dale was my first real PvP game, because even though you're working together, you can still jump on each other, you can pick each other up, and you can literally throw each other off the edges. There's also colliders in between the characters, so you can't stand on the same spot. You need to jump up on your friend and stand on them in order to kind of pass by certain areas. And playing 2 players on Chip and Dale's actually, in my opinion, makes it harder. Of course, if you have somebody that's really good in this game with jumping platforms and so on, that person could pick the other one up. That was worse. And if they were going to fail something, you can just toss your friend over to survive instead of both dying at the same time. And both needs to return to the start of the level. No, but Chip and Dale was one of those really blast games that was so much fun, and the music is really iconic and fun to listen to. It's playful. And this is also what it was for me back in the day. And going back to listen to a little bit of the first episode in Gameable Audio's history. This is going to be in Swedish though, since when I started out this podcast, it was fully in Swedish, called Äntligen Spelmusik, meaning finally game music in a direct translation, which was also the direct translation I went for when I wanted to transcend over, but we're not there yet. So let's actually listen in a little bit of how it started back in 2017.
Vi kan ju börja med att säga här att den här underbara jingle eller introlåten till programmet som kommer vara med framöver är även gjord av dig.
Ja! Så jag hoppas den funkar.
Ja, jag hoppas absolut den kommer funka. Jag tror på den.
And that was the first available episode publicly released for this podcast. And the guest that we were hearing in this as well is the artist known as Rymdkraft, Space Force in English. And he was also the one who actually made the first jingle for this podcast as well, which I'm very happy that he was. He was also one of those really dance vibey chiptune artists that I love and adore. His music is so good, and I love all the positivity that I always feel and get when I'm listening to it. So, yeah, a little bit special of a background before I want to just reveal the first initial jingle of the podcast is that is connected to this episode. No, we were actually talking about the soundtrack for Shovel Knight. I'm so sorry I'm missing out on I did not write this down. Shovel Knight. And me and him, we plan to just sit online on Discord, if I remember correctly, or maybe was Skype even this time. I actually were going back and forth between Discord and Skype. And in the beginning, I thought like, hey, I can't put a lot of effort and hours on the guests themselves when they come into the podcast. So my initial idea of when I did this podcast was like, hey, I will record everything. I will try to record it on my end, or I will have something to record the episode itself and so on. So I was looking into a lot of different solutions and so on, and ended up with having some software on my computer that basically took everything. And yeah, I really took the short straw here. And you can definitely hear the quality of the episodes being such a big difference, in my opinion. I was like crying almost listening back on this episode when I was thinking like, oh, where I've gone from and where am I now? And it is such a blast. It is crazy to see the quality changes that actually have happened throughout these 7 years. Me upgrading to a new microphone and so on, but also how I do things and how software has actually developed to become better and easier to use when talking to people online. For example, back in the day, I've used both Discord and Skype, and I usually tended in the beginning just to have recording software on my computer, recording everything. But in the end, I noticed some smaller issues and so on, and that maybe go into the next like era of how I record, where I record my own kind of thing. I have a backup that records both of us, the software I was talking about, on my computer. But then also I asked all the guests, like, could you please record yours as well on your end, and then just send it to me and we will work from there. Because it was so much better getting that audio quality up better by having the guests record themselves. Of course, it weighted me a little bit down because I felt like, oh, now I'm putting a work for them. But in all honesty, it helps the quality to become so much better, and it actually isn't too much of an ask either. No, but having Rymdkraft in the first episode was because he made the jingle. It is one of my favorite things to have talked to Rymdkraft personally as well, and he's actually the one who suggested to talk about the Shovel Knight. But here comes the little twist. So, in the beginning, as I said, I was the one recording everything. And I actually thought I pressed record the first time me and him talked about it. We recorded, if I remember correctly, we recorded it on a Thursday, and I was supposed to release it on Monday after that. And as I listen in on the recording that I did, I actually did not have anything that Rymdkraft said. So our 2-hour-long discussion we had about Shovel Knight was not to anything, basically. Because on that recording, we could only hear my end of the conversation and nothing from him. So I felt awful when I sat down on that Friday and wanted to just go through the whole episode and adjust it and edit it and mix it. So I actually reached out to him on message like, hey, I am feeling really bad right now, but I did not record your part, so I need to record this episode again. And I felt so bad when this happened, and I was really feeling low, but Rymdkraft really delivered, as he's just like, no worries, we can take it at this date. And we took it on, if I remember correctly, it was on the Saturday. It was either Saturday or the Sunday. We took the evening and just recorded a new episode, and we had to pretend to a certain degree on some things, because since we started the first time, we were kind of blank on how we would kind of walk towards and add information and so on. But still, we still talked about new things, even though we recorded it a second time. So there were some kind of fake surprises that we had for certain things, but at the same time, we still talked about new things as well. And we delivered, really. I don't remember exactly how long that episode was. If it was like 1 hour and 40, like 1 hour and 30 minutes or something like that. It was still a long episode, which ended up almost as much as it was supposed to when we initially recorded it. So I was very happy with it. But it was crazy. And considering when it comes to the stories of having things recorded and me not doing what I should do, there have been multiple occasions where I either have forgotten to add in the bots during the conversation. So we talk about the first initial thing, and then I add the bot from after we hear the first song. And this is something I really needed to work with myself, because I was so engaged talking about the composers or the guest that was in the episode that I usually tended to miss these things out, which was super weird, and it didn't feel professional at all. But yeah, I am still just an amateur. I created this podcast on the pure and sole fact that I want to educate myself surrounding in this area. And this is something that really have struck a good amount of chords inside of me. So that's why I really love and adore this concept of what I'm doing with the podcast. I'm just a happy, passionate amateur about this. I put a lot of hours to research these composers, to learn more about them. And when I have actual guests on the podcast, I really ask the stupid questions sometimes. But that's because I don't know. And I think that is my definite unique selling point when it comes to this podcast. I don't know. I'm as clueless as everybody else joining in on this podcast, except if other composers listen in on this, or people who know a lot more about music already from the get-go. So that's why I think my concept of this podcast works as well as it does. Now I've been talking for a long time. Let's actually head into not the next song, but the first initial jingle that the Rymdkraft made for this podcast. It's a short one, and right after we listen in on that one, we will go straight into the other system that we're going to put versus the Nintendo Entertainment System. So let's listen to the jingle, enjoy that one, and right after that, we're heading into the Master System's Alex Kidd in Miracle World and the Underwater theme. Enjoy. Second track of the week, Alex Kidd in Miracle World, and this was the underwater theme that you hear when you're basically dropping down in the waters. Changing on the get-go here. It felt so weird when you first play this game, you're walking around in the overworld, and in the middle of that map, in the middle of that level, you're basically dropping down in the water, and the music just snaps over and becomes this one. And it's so amazing in my opinion. I love the old Alex Kidd. I don't know how I feel about it today, but yeah. It is what it is. The OST here was composed by the Japanese Tokuhiko Uwabo, and the game was developed by the Japanese company Sega and released on the Sega Master System back in 1986. The game was re-released as a virtual purchase on the Wii eShop in 2008. It had a release on the PS3 in 2012, and lastly on the Nintendo Switch in 2019. Of course, these were all the digital versions of the game. And the game itself, it actually got a release as a remake as Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX, and this was released in 2021. So it's so much fun to see a little bit more about the older games getting, like, they're a little bit sort of a revamp, but it feels so extra weird because it's Alex Kidd. Alex Kidd felt like this really black sheep out there of video games. You were walking around with a fist equal to your own size, and you were doing boss battles with rock, paper, and scissors. It was unique, it was weird as fudge, but I still loved it. It's so amazing. And the music itself is really good. So for me, when it comes to my Alex Kidd kind of situations, I remember my best friend who lived in the apartment next to us, or in the corridor, next door. We live door to door, basically. So we had to run a little bit up and down in stairs and so on. But yeah, he had the Master System. And he had this Master System where if you didn't put in any cartridge, you just locked the little lid they had on top. It actually started Alex Kidd in Miracle World. And it was so much fun. I couldn't do that with my Super Nintendo, okay? I couldn't do that with my NES. It felt so unique and so cool that you actually had a console that came with a game right into the box. Instead of course, when you purchased a Super Nintendo, you got Super Mario World, or if you bought one of those bundles or so on. But in the Master System, I think it was the second edition of the Master System, it actually came with Alex Kidd right there on the spot. It wasn't a cartridge or anything that you can lose, basically. And it was so much fun. No, but I remember we were really struggling. It's like, oh, should we go paper? Should we go rock? Should we go scissors? All the time, and it felt like we did it wrong or incorrectly and so on, but we had such a great time. And a lot of people, when they talk about these systems, I've heard so many stories about, oh, it's Nintendo versus Sega. Oh, are you a Sega kid or are you a Nintendo kid? For me, I was a Nintendo family, basically. I had a NES and I had a SNES. And all my other friends, not all of them, but some other friends had Sega consoles. And I loved both of them. What I didn't like were the controllers for the Sega, because they felt awkward in your hand, while the NES or the Super NES felt so good. It really melted into my hands, but that could just be because I actually owned those consoles. If I owned a Master System or something like that, it might have felt more unique and more suitable, but I still loved the different kind of games on them. But as time moved on and I played so much more Nintendo, I can definitely say the audio chip for Sega is really the low hanging fruit. It was so bad, in my opinion. It has these high-pitched noises and so on in comparison to the Super Nintendo, for example. And as you can see here in the background, I still love this out of pure nostalgia. But having these high pitches in the Underworld theme, it kind of makes my ear bleeds to some extent, but the nostalgia makes it worth it. And I think a lot of people might agree to that point. I haven't heard too many people that like listening in on Sega because it's amazing. There are still amazing tracks for this console. Don't mistake me on that. There are some really good tunes on this, and I will prove the point before this episode ends. I will definitely prove it within like 6 songs or something like that. But yeah. In consider to just talking about artists and talking about video game music, one of the bigger things that I took into this as well, we're backing up a little bit more. One of the biggest reasons why I started this podcast was because of another podcast. And this podcast was called Spelklassiker Musik. It was like game classic music. And this was run by, in the beginning, one person. Guelman was his online nickname, still is. And about 70 episodes in, if I remember correctly, this other person joins in called Hero. Hero is kind of a known guy as well. He played like all, if I remember correctly, it was all the Game Boy games on stream. And then when it was done, he closed down that. I don't think he streams anymore right now, but might be doing a little bit. No, but they did the podcast. They were talking about nostalgia. They were talking a little bit about tracks they loved and adored, but they were mainly focused on their own kind of stories and their old kind of nostalgia to the different tracks and the games themselves. It was still super fun to listen to. And for me, this was a way for me to get into music again, video game music, because when I grew up, I didn't get the time to listen to the game music that much. It was usually me visiting other friends or me downloading songs when I was at LAN parties or something like that people were sharing, because I love the bleeps and bloops. I definitely do. But when I was at home, it was harder to listen to these because my parents did not adore or like these bleep bloops as much as I did. So I kind of grew up in a home where I listened to mainstream music most of the time. So it was me looking at the pixels, not enjoying them fully. But of course, I love and adore video game music, so don't mistake me for that. No, so when it comes to this part in life right now, so after Spelklassiker Musik closed down after 300 episodes, I actually just went up and sent a message to Guelmin and said, hey, is it okay if I take up after you guys? And he said, sure, no problem, just go ahead. But at the same time, I didn't want to do the same thing they did. So I really gave it a thought and gave it a process where I wanted to be unique in some way. And I listened through other podcasts at this point in time, listening to video game music and so on. One of the things people didn't do as much was to actually talk more about the composers, what they've done, so we can explore a little bit more about how composers grew in their life, etc. But at the same time also figuring out and actually talking to these composers, like what are their processes, what are they thinking about, what do they struggle with, and so on. And that's where I found my unique selling point on this one. So I thought to myself, like, yeah, if I'm making this, I'm gonna make sure that every fourth episode is going to be an episode where I have invited either a composer or artist that have worked on a specific soundtrack, or I'm inviting an artist or a composer that wants to work on it. They haven't gotten into the market yet. Or they're working on a subgenre like the demo scene, chiptune, and so on. Because I want to explore everything that kind of came out of video game music. Because I love and adore it all. And that's basically where it all started. And the first episode that I actually did, it's called The Pilot. It was me going through my favorite game. And I was going ravagely through it. I was going through different strategies and so on, which order you were supposed to complete all the bosses in order to play the least amount of time or to have the kind of best kind of situation for you. But I kind of overdid it, I felt like. I really love and adore the episode. I love and adore Mega Man X. So, but at that point in time, if I was going to follow up with that kind of concept, I needed to put in so many more hours into all the games that I was supposed to talk about. And in the beginning, I had that time, I had that energy and so on to play video games all the time and educate myself and understand. But for me, in the beginning, I was releasing every week. And doing all this work, it kind of fell apart quickly, even though I love and adore these games that I talked about in the beginning. It was crazy. It was a blast, and I was crazy. But I freaking loved and adored it. But with this, I think it's time for me to go into a little bit of a testimonial. I don't have too many of them, but I will start out with one of my first fans that I love and adore. And it's my dear old friend, El Kebabo. And he actually guested in episode 116 of Äntligen Spelmusik, so this first part. And he writes this in his testimonial. Wow! 200 episodes. That's an insane amount of tracks, guests, and awesomeness. My fondest memory is, of course, the episode I'm in, number 116, with the lovely Kirby as topic, smiley face. I also really like your composer specials, where you dig deep on a special person. Keep it up, and soon it will be 400 episodes. Lots of love from El Kebabo. And then he added a little bit of a kiss emoji right there. Thank you so much, El Kebabo, for that testimonial. Of course, I remember this, and I love that we were listening in on so many different kind of styles of Kirby as well, not just happy-go-lucky, because Kirby kind of has that vibe all over the place all the time. And I love this. And of course, going through to talk a little bit more about Kirby, and especially noticing that they actually had like an animation with Kirby that neither of us knew at that point in time, or at least, if I remember correctly, we've heard about it, we've never really seen it. So we were actually going through the episode and listened to that freaking main theme it had on English. And it really became like a virus for both of us. We were singing this to each other back and forth. And it was so crazy. I just loved and adore those times, and it's a great memory for me. So thank you so much for sharing this with me, El Kebabo. And now, as I said, I didn't just want to go through all the different things with the composers and so on. I actually liked going through a lot about everything surrounding video game music. And one of those things are my love for remixes. So for each and every era we're going through here, we're also going to listen to a remix. So we're going out with one of my favorite ones made by Daniel Wretzel. And it is DuckTales and the classic track that I know everybody loves and adores, and I think people have listened to it a bit too much. But just listen to this one. It is The Moon. And this marks the end of an era. This was Daniel Wressel with the track To the Moon, not To the Moon, god dang it, Chris, from the game DuckTales. And people might know, especially on the Swedish side here, might know a little bit more about Daniel Wressel. He was actually one of the, I think it was like the main host of the podcast Bitar till kaffet. I myself never really listened to it, but I know it was surrounding video games at least. And they kind of stopped before I got my hands on the podcast as well. But I love Daniel Wressel's music that it does, the remixes has done. It's not too many, but it really has this dance vibe to it, and he does it really, really well. So I know I picked him up before. I talked a little bit more like down deep on who he is and so on, but I don't remember if it was on the Swedish version of the podcast or if it was on the English one. Most likely it was on the Swedish one. No, but as we're ending the first little era, having the 8-bit going through that, we're heading into one of my favorite eras, which is the 16-bit with the Super Nintendo, and of course we're going versus again here, versus the Genesis/Mega Drive. No, but when it comes to, before we're kind of ending, I need to go back a little bit. DuckTales is an amazing game. The Moon, amazing track as well. I know a lot of people have heard it. People might already be super tired of it. I don't know. But for one thing I know for sure is I love and adore this track nonetheless, and I listen to it from time to time, both the original and remixes of it. No, but as we go into the Super Nintendo era here of it, I actually want to bring up my first big top list. Not first big. This is the only top list that I have, basically. But it's a nice memory for me that I want to go through. So I want to do my own first top 5 personal favorite episodes that I had for different kind of reasons. And on the 5th place here, we have Äntligen spelmusik, and this is episode 48. And this is the soundtrack that I called Det urflippade soundtracket with Douglas Holmqvist. And the urflippade is basically a pinball reference in this. And the reason why this is one of my favorite episodes was not the episode itself. It was still a super interesting episode, but what happened afterwards was what was the most amazing thing. So Douglas Holmqvist is the composer for Pinout is the name of the game. It's a mobile game where you easily just press left or right side in order to move the left or right flippers on the game. And Pinout is this like continuously playing, forever playing pinball fields. You don't want to drop the ball, but keep playing and moving upward. So it comes with a lot of music, comes with like almost biomes and so on, which is basically more colors and so on, and new challenges that occur with each and every table that you're playing on. Anyway, when it comes to this soundtrack, it was amazing. But afterwards, I usually for all the supporters I have, and definitely all the guests, they receive these stickers from the podcast that has the logo of the podcast. And I wanted to give him one as well. So as he was living down in Malmö, and I was traveling down to Malmö later, like 1 month later or something like that, to this event called, is it Retrospel? No, it's not Retrospel. I'm forgotten. Retrospelsfestivalen. It is that, yeah. And when we traveled down there, we talked about, like, yeah, do you want to meet outside or something like that. We didn't really fully commit to something, but I was like, yo, I'm here now. If you want to hang out and take a coffee or something like that, let's do that. And I just got a text back. It's like, hey, I'm inside now. And I did not expect him to go inside to the event to hang out and so on. But no, he was on the inside, and he brought his children with him. And I just met up with him, gave him the sticker. We talked a little bit. And all of a sudden, he just picks up this box that he had with him. And I was just curious what the hell that was in the beginning. Why is he just picking up a random box all of a sudden? But no, he actually brought a box with him with his vinyls. So the vinyl of the soundtrack itself, and he actually gave me one right there on the spot. And I didn't really know what to do at the beginning. I never really gotten gifts like that before from a guest, so it felt really weird. I gave him a sticker, and he gave me a freaking LP. But I have this vinyl up in a frame here at home. I really wanted to put it on display, even though I can't play vinyl myself here at home because I don't have a vinyl player, but I just love having it. And while we were there at this event, we actually started talking. He was talking about how he could sell them and so on. And while we were actually talking there, just by having that open, people started asking, like, hey, can I buy one of those? And it felt so bizarre that we were just talking about that. And he just stands there selling vinyl after vinyl. And those were, if I remember correctly, was also one of the last ones that he had. So yeah, he's basically selling out his vinyl records while just standing there talking to me. It felt so weird. And yeah, if that was the fifth memory, let's head into the 4th one. So this is Äntligen spelmusik, episode 74. This is the FPS tribute together with Thomas Nyholm. And what was so very special about this one is that this is a guy who just has the passion for video games. He noticed me talking about my podcast at one point. I don't know exactly when, but he reached out to me. It's like, hey, I haven't done video game music or anything, but I have made a rock tribute on FPS games. Can I join in? And I was like, that sounds fucking amazing. Let's actually go. So I just listened in on this full track, a full album. I think it was like almost 10 tracks. And they're all reference to games such as Duke Nukem, Quake, and Doom. And they had different kind of edges and so on, but still yet had like a story to it. So you had like the intro, you had the first level, you have boss music and so on. And it was so freaking great. So that was one of my like favorite episodes as well. Just having somebody coming in and being like pure amazingness on passion and so on surrounding this. And I really hope Thomas Nyholm got some jobs or something like that after that. On the third place, we find Finally Game Music, episode 148. The Finally Game Music didn't really turn down the episodes like I did with Gameable Audio, because Gameable Audio felt like a new rebrand. That's why I felt like I could just go down on the episodes, while I just translated over the name of Äntligen Spelmusik to Finally Game Music. I just kept the numbers going up. But in episode 148, it actually is the episode where I talked to Stephen Malin about his game Beard Blade. Not his game, but the game that he worked on called Beard Blade. This was a game that I was just super ecstatic about. I saw him talking a little bit about it online, on Twitter specifically, and I just love the visuals of this game and so on. I actually was like straight into it, buying the game on first day, and I talked to Steven. It's like, hey, I really need to talk about this soundtrack. I want to see how you are and so on. And what's so special about this episode? It was not just my episode. Stephen Malin has his own kind of podcast that he does over on YouTube, where he talks to a lot of different composers and so on as well. And he's very open and thorough about his information, and it was really easy to talk to him and so on due to that. And it was so amazing talking to him, being on his podcast while he was at the same time being on mine. So that one was a really unique experience. And after that episode, I also, thanks to Stephen Malin, got in contact with some agents that through them I could possibly in the end now also get in contact with other composers, more high prominent composers that I would really love to have one day. So Stephen Malin has been a great contact in that sense, together with being an amazing person, individual. And he also writes books on this topic, being a composer and doing this together with a big, large family. The next one is a very special one. It is such an amazing blast. It is a return. It was Gameable Audio, episode 35. And this is the Ultra special that I did together with Oscar Rättvider Rudelius. And he will always have a very special place in my heart. The first time I met him, we talked online, yet again on Twitter. I think that's most of the information I get to talk to people is through either Bandcamp, where I noticed them, or Twitter, where they talk a little bit about music, and I noticed they are composers. But Oscar was one of those that I found, and we talked a little bit about. The first episode we did was in Äntligen Spelmusik, and we talked about the game Wunderling. And the special one here is this is actually the first time I went out of my own apartment, my own room, in order to head somewhere else. So in this case, I went from the east coast to the west coast of Sweden, to Gothenburg, where Oscar lives. And we went to his studio, and he has set up everything so we could just sit down and start recording. And it was such a blast. I knew from that point, I actually knew a little bit before that, but that was actually the first real big encounter I had where I was like, this is where I want to be. That's why I want to have this new equipment that I have today, so I can travel around, sit in front of composers eye to eye, and have genuine discussions. So I had a great, freaking amazing time together with Oscar, and we still keep in touch, talking a little bit from here and there. And yeah, I actually got a little special message from Oscar in this, so I want to play that little testimonial from him right now, thanking me for this time. He will always have a special place in my heart, so let's roll his testimonial.
Hey, Gameable Audio, Chris, this is Rättvider. Just wanted to send big congrats on your 200th episode. Can't thank you enough for what you're doing for the community of audio people, game lovers, and composers of a video game. Keep it up, man, and let's hope there will be another 200. Sending my love. Ciao.
And with that, really, thank you so much, Oscar, for that audio piece of yours. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And when it comes to the big one then, my personal top 5 favorite of episodes was a little bit of a dream come true. This episode was aired a little bit previous to episode 35, and this is the Gameable Audio episode 31. And the reason why I find this one so close to my heart was actually it is the Instant Remedy special together with Instant Remedy himself. For me, Instant Remedy was something through Spelklassiker Musik that really struck my heart. I know Guelmin played this Flimbo's Quest remix by Instant Remedy, and I was instantly hooked. I listened to his music so many times, and they've been filling my memories, they've been filling my days with so much happiness. And it was such a blast when I was able to hear his absolute first live performance over at Modeskeppet in 2023. And I actually got the time to speak to him personally at that point in time. I asked him, like, hey, is this something out of interest for you, if you want to talk about your work and so on? And he said, like, yeah, just reach out to me. And I was a little bit still skeptic if he wanted to do it or not. But I reached out to him, and he actually reached back. I told him, like, hey, please listen to an episode so you know what you're getting yourself into and so on. And if you like it, let's set up some time, and we'll take it from there. And he actually did listen to it. But he reached back and said, like, yeah, during January and February, it's going to be quite hectic for me with work and so on. So I just told him, just focus on that. I'll reach out to you by the end of January, and we'll see if we can find some time. And I did, and we were able to find some time and did that episode. And it was so much fun having to talk. You usually can say that don't talk to your big stars and so on, because your picture of them can kind of get twisted and destroyed from you romanticizing a little bit about them. No, but Instant Remedy was such a genuine person. It was so much fun talking to him, getting to know him a little bit better. I haven't really held up much contact with him since, but I'm still so freaking struck in my heart by this. So I'm just super excited. And that is my top 5 memories of episodes that I hold dear in personal levels. There's still a lot of amazing episodes, of course. I can state everything and have some sort of connection to them in a way, shape, or form. But yeah, Instant Remedy was my number 1 due to the fact that I loved and listened to his music so freaking much. And with that said, I think I've been talking so much right now. I think it's time to go into Super Nintendo era right now. Don't you think? Let's go. So, next track that we're going to listen to now is my favorite game of all time. As I said before, I did a pilot on this game. So now let's start with the amazing track of Storm Eagle from the game Mega Man X. Yeah, I'm still getting the chills. I'm still getting the chills, guys. Mega Man X, Storm Eagle. The OST was composed by the Japanese Satsuo Yamamoto, Satoshi Ukai, Yasuo Kondo, Hayato Kaji, Kazunori Tasaki, and Tatsuya Yoshikawa. There's a lot of composers for this video game, and they're doing such a great job. Holy crap. The game here was developed, as might everybody knows, the Japanese company Capcom, and was released on the SNES back in 1993. It also had a release on DOS in 1995, Wii and iOS in 2011, and Wii U for 2013, and the Nintendo 3DS in 2016. Of course, we need to notify here that most of these were just digital downloads and so on in stores, etc. And also, I love to always take this up. The Mega Man X game did also actually retrieve an official 30-year anniversary box for the SNES game through Retrotainment Games and Infinite NES Lives. There were 2 versions of this cart, which one was white and which also was limited to 7,500 copies, and the other one was a special clear blue case, which were limited to 1,000, and these were sold back in 2023. And it is so crazy due to the fact that I actually own one of these. I did not get the special clear blue case because you could only make like a full first purchase, and they will randomly like place this out. So it was pure chance if you were able to get one of these 1,000 special clear cases. And at this point in time, I actually owned the Mega Man X physical already, but I actually just owned it as like this rental case. So I had the game, I had a manual, but I had the rental case. I didn't actually have the full the full box that came with it, which I was kind of on the hunt for because I did not want to have that rental case. But I got such a great deal on the case itself, so of course I just had to go for it. Anyway, when I got this 30-year anniversary, I was able to purchase this full, nice, neat 30-year anniversary and still earn a little bit more money by selling my old game. So that's what I did. I own this Mega Man X 30-year anniversary. And also, especially, I just cut this track short a little bit. It's still not a long track, but I actually cut it short for a little bit of a special reason. And you will know the reason soon enough. Mega Man X, as I said, is one of my favorite games of all time. When I was young, I never really completed it. I played it a lot. Loved the music. Loved the music. But it actually took a really long time before I was able to complete this game. I think it was back in almost like 2012 or something like that. I had one of my best friends that I grew up with when I was young came over to me when I was living in Småland, in Nässjö. And we started talking about Super Nintendo games, and I was talking a little bit about Mega Man X, and I think we were talking specifically about the music a little bit. And he was like, oh, it's such a great game, I complete it every year. And I was like, I haven't completed it yet. And he was like, what the fuck? Should we play it? Sure. So we actually sat down and played through Mega Man X at that night, and of course we were completed like 2-3 hours later. But we had such a great time just sharing our memories from when we were younger, but at the same time, me completing Mega Man X, the game that I love and adore, without having completed it, we're finally able to beat that game. The happiness that shot throughout my whole body, it was insane. And we struggled, though, because I was trying to play as much as possible, so I was the one actually completing this, but we were still changing on par, so he took some things, I took some things. But no, it was such a blast. And during this era of SNES, this is where I grew up and had most encounter with video games, especially on console. And the other console was, of course, the Genesis, or the Mega Drive here in Sweden. And I had a couple of friends. I remember the hairdresser, her older son had a Mega Drive. My sister's friend had a Mega Drive together with that CD thingy. I think it was Mega Drive CD or Mega CD. But she had the accessory to it, so you can just plug it in and then have being available to utilize that CD. And it was such a blast. And one of those games that I love and adore. It is a crappy game. It totally is a crappy game. But I don't know why. Because of nostalgia, I just love this game. And the game I'm talking about is Altered Beast. And just to purely show my love, I actually has a rash guard when I'm doing submission wrestling or when I do my martial art with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I actually have a sweater called a rash guard with Altered Beast on it. So that's how much time and effort I would like to put into Altered Beast, even though it's a shitty game. But just having that rise from your grave, and then the music kicks in. But we're going to listen to the track Beast Transformation, the track that will be played as soon as you get into full form in Altered Beast. So sit back and enjoy. There we have it. I just love the... It's so freaking good. This was on Genesis. Altered Beast, Beast Transformation. This game, of course, did release on a whole lot of different consoles, but yeah, I'm just jumping ahead here. The OST here was composed by the Japanese Tohoru Nakabayashi, and the game was developed by the Japanese company Sega yet again, and released on the Genesis back in 1988. So this game is as old as me, apparently. Maybe I should check up the specific dates. Maybe I am a little bit older than this game or not. We don't know. But I think they didn't release it on the 1st of January, so let's just say I'm older than this game at least. Give me something, people. The game here was later released on a lot of consoles. I'm not gonna go through everything. The game even released on computers, so... I mean, it had a pretty steady release all up until 2021, where it lastly released on the Nintendo Switch, most likely as a digital download of some sort. No, but going through the time and so on, as I said, the Nintendo Entertainment System era and Genesis was like my biggest gaming era. I went home to people to play video games of different kinds, Final Fight and so on, play some pinball games on the Genesis as well. I don't remember the names on those games. It felt like I was renting games each and every weekend for the Super Nintendo, or I was at a friend's place playing something they rented and so on. I remember playing on the Super Nintendo Rock and Roll Racing so many times. That was one of those games that I rented it so much. Even the rent place, like, you can't rent this anymore. We've got more people that want to rent this game. And at that point in time, I was like, Dad, can we get this game? And we actually went around in the city of Linköping to find this game, but we weren't able to find this. But the last store we went to, it's called Och B, Överskottsbolaget. And there, in a glass case, we were able to see Rock and Roll Racing. I don't remember if it was a red box. A little bit. I want to say red box during this time. And it has the cars on them and so on. It looked really cool. I definitely love the PAL version's art over the NTSC. So sorry, America, you got the short straw here. We are so much better on cover art, to be honest. No, but it looked really, really cool in my opinion. And I was just looking at it, and since it was a glass case, we couldn't access the game to pick it up and walk out with it. Of course, purchase it. So my dad actually needed to go and get somebody to open the glass case. And I was just standing there. Most likely, my freaking eyes must have been stars. Like, I was so starstruck watching this game through the case. And it was crazy. My parents bought it for me, and I was playing it like crazy. I love and adore this game. I remember I was really close at completing this game, but I have not completed this game. And this is also one of those revenge games I really need to get to. The Rock and Roll Racing was one of those that really stopped my heart gameplay-wise. I loved it so much. But yeah. Anyway, I love and adore this, and I want to talk a little bit more about older episodes yet again. So let's head into next episode to listen to.
Och när vi väl tittar på den här låten, det här är ju låten till ledmotivet då för Legend of Mana. Och precis som ni kanske har hört nu så är det ju en viss svensk röst som vi hör här. Och den här svenska rösten tillhör Annika Ljungberg. Några av er kanske minns henne som sångerskan ifrån bandet Rednecks.
There we have it, and that was actually episode 54. So this was about 1 year from when I did the first initial episode. So we can still hear a little bit more clarity to my voice right now because I was recording this all by myself. And the subject I was talking about was songs or video game music with vocals in them. And specifically what I was talking about here is by the Song of Mana from the what was it, Children of Mana or something? I don't even remember what I said right now. No, but in this we can also hear me doing a lot of breathing and so on. This is something I actually will leave that in so you can clearly hear it. But today, as I go through and edit everything, I try to take out all these breathing and so on because I didn't have what I have today, a pop filter and so on. So back in the day, I was just breathing the hell out of the episodes and so on. It was crazy. But no, this is actually what happened in 1 year from a guest episode to something I'm doing all by myself. I feel like the quality has gone up a little bit, but I also feel like I'm getting more into the role of actually talking about video game music, which is also for the better. And I love and adore this kind of track, especially the Song of Mana, because it is a JRPG, but the song is in Swedish, so it kind of messes with your brain, and I love to point that out. I did way more research, etc., on this episode, and especially this song, due to the fact I already knew that who it was, who was singing, and so on, but I didn't know why she was singing in this specific track. But that's what I wanted to know, so I actually dug deeper and I got introduced to it, and I just love and adore it, and it was amazing in my opinion. That is what I like to do with this episode. I don't just want to be like, oh, this is this person. I actually want to know a little bit more why, who are they, and so on. I want to get to know them. That's why I think I'm doing such a great job with this, why people love and why people like to share these episodes. And I love that people are willing to share these episodes with friends and family and tell them like, hey, you should listen to Chris. He knows a lot of things. I actually don't know shit, but I do a lot of research. That's what I'm doing. So every time I make these episodes, it's basically me going in and doing another job, to be honest. And I do this out of passion. And it's not just me. Every time I have a composer or a friend joining in, they're talking out of their passion as well. And that's why I think it's very important having these discussions and so on. One thing that didn't really pan out as I would have liked to is to be able to create a sincere, nice community surrounding this. And I think I've been a little bit on the downside of what I want to create. I just create these episodes and I hope people would like to join in. I don't really give any incentive in why people should do it. And I have different kind of friends surrounding this. Of course, they've been joining in on the episodes and so on. And one of my favorite ones, considering, was an early episode. It's Äntligen Spelmusik, the 6th episode, where Pixel Pirates joined in, to Bounta. And we talked for a really long time. I think that was one of my longest episodes ever with a composer. That's when I started thinking about, okay, do I need to set some time limits and so on? Like, how often are we going to talk? Because some of these sections where we talked were really, really long. And I started thinking about, are people getting tired of this? I'm looking at how radio shows are doing their setups and so on, that you shouldn't talk more than 5 to 10 minutes, but at the same time I really find some of these discussions really, really interesting, and I hope everybody else thinks so as well. That's why I try to make them between 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the discussions and so on between each song. So that's where kind of everything stemmed from it. But at the same time, when we did that episode, since we were recording for such a long time, we actually had an issue. When we saved this, it was chaos saving it. So we've been talking for so long, and when Tabanta was bound to save his file in order to send it to me, his program crashed. And we both were kind of, because at this point in time, for some reason, we didn't have that combined file that I recorded online. So in this case, I was kind of dependent on his file working. And since his whole program crashed before being able to save, both me and him were kind of in panic. But as he restarted his computer, we went back online, so we talked to each other. It's like, how is it looking? What is happening? And he noticed that, okay, when he started up the program, Fruit Loops that he was recording in, it said like, hey, something happened. We can try and recreate this. So he started recreating all the talk that we did. But for some reason, trying to recover that took more than 8 hours. So I started actually getting some panic. It's like, am I going to be able to rework this, edit it, and mix this episode before it has a release? So I was kind of scared on multiple levels on this. But in the end, it worked out fine. It became a great episode. It was so much fun talking to his work on how he creates the dancing music that he does together with his co-partner in Pixel Pirates. And on the other subjects no, I think we will save this little story for later. Now let's head back into a remix. I think it's time for a remix. But this is not any sort of remix. As I said before, I played for obvious reasons Storm Eagle track a little bit less than I usually do. Of course, it's not a large song, but here's the reason why. as I said previously in the episodes, I said that I have a little bit of a problem together with the Genesis Mega Drive sound chip. It's a little bit high. It's a little bit. It makes your ears bleed. But you always have these sort of specific tracks sometimes from time to time that are really, really doing it well. And online, there is this guy called My New Soundtrack who does things really, really well. And he has a series on the topic of Genesis. So we're going to listen to Mega Man X Storm Eagle, but in a Genesis version. The remix of Storm Eagle from the game Mega Man X in a Genesis version, created by My New Soundtrack. And I really love this version of it, because one thing I really like about the remix artist My New Soundtrack is that he always adds these like separate sections where he do something by himself. And I really love and adore that, because usually when it comes to remixes, you can tend to just hear the same melody and everything like the original, but just in another take. And just by incorporating their own little thing into it, it gives them more the originality of the song and the remix, in my opinion. That's why I love remixes, because they really span from every kind of perspective, to be honest. It's hard for me to specify anything specifically in this case. So I love and adore. He's an amazing. I've listened to so many tracks from My New Soundtrack, and the most reason is because he takes these classic, really good songs, and he just adds a Genesis filter on top of everything, and it sounds really good. Like I said, I usually don't like it makes my ears bleed, but he proves my point that the Genesis chip is really, really powerful if used correctly, and this just proves the point. To be honest, I really like this track more than the original SNES. The SNES is still a really good blast, but making it in this kind of, I would say, sphere really hits it out of the park. It hits the ball out of the park. So that's insane. But yeah, that kind of sums in on the second generation of me walking around and so on. The next generation we're going to talk about is the N64 versus the PlayStation 1. And for me, I actually did only own a PlayStation 1, but it was really, really late in the era of this span in my life. And the N64, I haven't played too much on it. I would say most of the time at this point in time in my life, I played N64 a little bit more, but I usually tended to play it while visiting stores and so on. So it was really hard for me to get into any sort of game. It was usually playing like a Mario 64, GoldenEye, and I think it was Perfect Zero, I think it's called. Perfect Dark, maybe? I'm a little bit unsure. That's a game I haven't played too much. I know it only released like 2 or 3 games in the series, and I know there are still a lot of people that hold that series up in high regards for being like a forgotten hidden gem and so on. No, but the first track we're going to play in this era is going to be from an N64, and I want to compend this together with a little bit of a memory. Like I said, I usually tended to play the N64 while visiting stores and so on, but where my parents has their house today, I actually got to know a couple of friends, other kids living close by, and one of those were my dear old childhood friend Martin, and he had an N64, and of course he had the Golden Eye and so on, but that was not it. Everybody knows who've been listening in previously to this have heard the discussion most likely about it. I'm a little bit unsure if I have actually talked about it in English, but on the N64 there is this other game called Snowboard Kids, and it took me by surprise. I had such an amazing time with this. A game about kids snowboarding. It's basically played like a downhill Mario Kart game, and you get into the lift right at the end and then go back up and you go for it another time. And it comes with skill, it comes with RNG, it comes with amazing tracks as well, to be honest. I love and adore, and the game is quirky, it's fun, and you need a little bit time to get into the controls on this, because it's not usual like left to right. Your character will only lean. You actually need to pull a little bit downward and then to the left to the right to actually take like the harder curvatures in this game. And I think a lot of people are having really big issue with that, because most of the people that dislike this game, I'm looking at you, SPE, talk about the controls in this game. For me and other players that love this game have really mastered the controls and see no issues at all with it, but it takes time. So you will either hate or love this game, depending on if you are able to control your character. On top of everything else, it really comes down to the RNG, having a good time, collecting power-ups and so on, both defensive and offensive attacks and so on that you can use. And sometimes you can get the really ones that everybody's going to struggle with, or you can get ones that are not that struggly, but still just takes you out a little bit, and you will be back in action as soon as possible from that. But yeah, enough said on this. Let's actually talk a little bit more about memories from Snowboard Kids after listening to the track Grass Valley. And that was Snowboard Kids Grass Valley from the N64. And the OST here was composed by the Japanese Isao Kasai and Tomohiko Sato. The game was developed by the Japanese company Atlas and released exclusively on the N64 back in 1997. And yeah, considering the audio here, the audio itself wasn't the best. I remember that as well, but I really like the melody of the Snowboard Kids tracks. So I can't really say I can return to this and say fondly like, hey, this is great music, because the audio quality on an N64 is kind of low. And I would say that about most of the music for the N64. I even think the Zelda music on Ocarina of Time and so on are bad quality-wise, even though they're great tracks. And yeah, I find it so fascinating in that sense that we're looking at some newer console. I think we can get better tracks and so on, but at the same time we're not really getting that. I actually think that the older NES Mega Drive actually has better quality, but also better music-wise. And most of it because it's not just the nostalgia talking here. For me, when it comes so early with N64 and PS1, you're working around all these polygons and so on, and they look horrible today when we're looking at it. I can still look back and kind of understand and enjoy it to some extent, but overall, it's not that great. I would usually tend to say if I want to mess with somebody, it's like when it comes to the Zelda series, I better believe 100% that in Ocarina of Time, it was the most definite time where Link were at his most furious and most damaged kind of phase. Because the Master Sword have not been sharper as it was in N64. It's literally done with like three polygons or something like that. I mean, it's sharp as fudge. It's crazy. No, I'm just messing about. I mean, I like it though, but I think N64 is my least favorable console of all time to this point in time in my life. I don't have too much good to say about it. There's not a lot of games in this console that I like personally and so on. But that could also be because I was still just this big PC nerd during this era, moving away from Super Nintendo, but I was going back and forth. I mean, graphics were almost better on the PC than the N64 already. So it feels weird for me to say, like, oh, N64 were looking great and so on. No, it looks like smudges and so on, and together with all these other things. No, but this feels like the era where I kind of grew away a little bit from games, even though I was gaming like hell. So it feels like a mix inside of me of what I'm supposed to do and how I feel about gaming at this point in time. But nonetheless, I love it so much anyway. But I think it's time to read a little bit more of the testimonials you guys have sent in. So the next one is coming actually from another VGM podcast. It's from the XVGM, and it states the following. Chris, congrats to 200 episodes. This is quite of an achievement in the VGM podcast community. Here's to 200 more. Sincerely, your pals at the fellow VGM podcast XVGM Radio, Mike and Justin. Thank you so much for your kind words, Mike and Justin, and I hope your podcast will also reach heights in the end. I'm a little bit unsure exactly because I've been listening to some episodes, not all of them. So yeah, love what you guys doing. This is also one thing that is so much fun, getting to know a little bit more about the VGM podcast community and the Discord servers we're hanging out in. Everybody's sharing a little bit of everything with each other. So it's so much fun to actually have a little bit more people to talk with and so on. And this is also kind of what I was after. So right now I'm actually following up on other people's communities, discussing video game music, board games, and so on. And this is a little bit of what I wanted to create, but I think other podcasts have been so much better to project this understanding that, hey, I want to talk to people about these things, not you guys listening in on them. But I love it so much. And next one I want to go for is actually another listener, Jimmy, and he sent me actually an audio clip. So let's listen in on that one.
Hello, Chris. This is your friend Michelangelo speaking. Just wanted to swing by and say congratulations to 200 episodes of Gameable Audio and Äntligen Spelmusik. You've done an amazing job interviewing a lot of interesting people and spreading the gospel of video game music. Keep up the good work and aim for 200 more.
Thank you so much, Jimmy, or Michelangelo. It feels so weird to listen to people talk a little bit more about my podcast and so on. And for me, researching for this episode, listening in on older and also reading through all the text and audio clips that I've gotten, it has been an emotional roller coaster for me. And I feel like it's hard to bring out the pure joy and happiness I usually feel when I record these episodes, because I can't move away from the feeling that I really do love and enjoy what I do. And it feels like it actually comes out in the other end as well, that you guys are noticing that. And today, going through everything and listening in on everything, talking about it, I feel like I've done so much work on this, and it makes me really happy to have been doing this for such a long time, and that people share and love it. And it becomes emotional for me just listening in to where I've been and where I am right now. And one little personal story from the podcast that kind of pops in mind on passion is when I made the Diablo specials together with my dear friend Pyro. This was during the Äntligen Spelmusik with the Swedish version, and the only reason why, of course, I always wanted to make a Diablo episode, but the main motivation I had for making that podcast episode, it was 3 big episodes, 1 for each game, so Diablo 1, 2, and 3. And the reason was basically there was another podcast that made an information and special episode on the Diablo series, specifically the first game. And that episode, it was 3 people talking about the game. They have been playing it and so on. 2 have actually been playing it, but they played like a remake version with a small adjustments and so on to the game. So it had things that didn't exist there in the beginning. So they actually didn't know what was originally there and what was not there. And the third guy, he have actually played the game, but he haven't played the game in a long time, even though he played it more recently. And listening in on that episode, I think the episode was about 2 hours long. About 30 minutes in, I already had like an A4 page filled up with incorrect information on story, on gameplay, and how things was really done. I know, in fact, that of course it's a Diablo special. These are their understandings of the game and so on. But when it was so much information that was incorrect, and they took in another person to be, and I quote, like a specialist on it, and that guy hardly talked in that episode, I felt I really need to do something good about this. Make people understand a little bit more about the game, where it comes from, and what's the story about. What's the fun thing with the Diablo games? So I took my friend who also love and adore the series. Both of us, we're still really noob and beginners and amateurs when it comes to music part, but we really enjoyed talking about the story. We really went into deep on so many details in this game so people could understand what was happening in the story and just enjoy that. So people who wanted to get a little bit better of the story of the Diablo games, they could just listen to the episodes and enjoy what we had there, and then jump into any of the games. We didn't really, even though we went through the story, it didn't really spoil anything, because there's so much going on in Diablo with bits and pieces that there's still so much you can enjoy while playing the game. So even though it's a special, I think it's still a great opportunity for people to dive into those things. And on the topic of more passionate things, one of my first encounters that were happening at an event, this was back when, I think 2019, I think, at least. We're around there. We're talking about this guy. He joined in for Äntligen Spelmusik in episode 100. His name was Mattias Johansson. And it was so interesting how it kind of came up. I was at this event. People were showing off their new prototype games and so on. They were basically showcasing their games. We're still very much in production and so on. Some of these people that were there, I actually knew them from before, and some of these guys were all new. But by the end of the event at the venue, I was standing around and just talking about video game music. And we got into the discussion that I had the podcast and so on. And all of a sudden, I just feel like somebody nudging my shoulder, and I was just turning around. It's like, okay, who are you? I didn't know this person. So the person was knocking on my shoulder like I knew this person. So I was turning around thinking like, hey, I'm gonna see a friend. But no, I saw this guy I've never seen before in my life, and he had these stars in his eyes. So like, hey, are you talking about video game music? And he was like super excited about this. And I was like, yeah, we're talking about video game music. And he was like, yeah, I heard you had a podcast and so on. And we actually started talking about video game music. And all of a sudden he just says that, hey, I've worked on a soundtrack myself. And while we were talking about this, the venue and everything, for some reason, even though I was happy he was talking about video game music, I felt really weirded out by this. And that's more on me. That's how I am, how I can react sometimes. But I was really, really weirded out at that point in time, so it felt weird. But I was still like open to suggestions and so on. So he was like, yeah, I've worked on this soundtrack for this game. He talked a little bit about the game, and he wasn't the best in explaining the game at that point in time because he was just so excited to talk about the music. So I didn't really have a good understanding of the game and so on. So we just exchanged communication situations so we can talk to each other and just plan ahead for this episode. And yeah, we had a little bit more of a discussion online through email, and I got to see the game a little bit more and so on, and it actually started to sound a little bit better. And this was also the first time I actually got to listen to what he worked on, and I was fucking blown away. It was insane. It was a really, really good, surprising soundtrack. And this is also one thing I really love and adore by making this podcast. All the people I meet, either if they are composers, artists, or if they're just passionate about video game music, it is so much fun to always find things that you don't really know existed there in the first place. I've found so much new music, so many more new composers, etc. I can live on this for a lifetime, I think. But I'm still pushing onward. I'm finding new things. I'm exploring the vast sea of video game music, and I hope everybody else listening in on the episode has the same mindset as I do. And if not, if you don't have it yourself, I hope you really enjoy listening to me going through this massive journey of video game music and so on. And I think from here, we're done a little bit with the personal stories and so on. It's time to dive into the next track. And the next track is, of course, from the PlayStation 1 game. And this is a game I did actually play recently, but originally I actually played this on PC. So let's enjoy Croc, the Legend of the Gobos, and the track Demon Itzy. That was the representative for the PlayStation 1, Croc Legend of the Gobos, Demon Itzy. This is actually a boss track, and the OST here was composed by an unknown origin in this case, because there are so many people with this name, and I couldn't find a specific for this specific person. But it's Karen Griffin, we have the Canadian Martin Gwyn Jones, and lastly the British Justin Charivona. The game here was developed by the British company Argonaut Software and was released on the PS1 and Sega Saturn back in 1997. And the year after, it was also released on PC. And for me, I have very fond memories of this game. First of all, I actually completed this game earlier this year in 2024 when I was visiting this gaming event where everybody brings their own gaming equipment and so on. And I was like, nope, I want to complete Croc. That's my goal for this event. And I did complete that game after a couple of hours going back and forth in that game. But I really enjoyed the game. It was so much fun, little 3D platform puzzling adventure where you play this little lizard, not a lizard, it's like a dragon. called Croc, and they're basically taking him in and enjoying like these small gobos, like furry little balls. That's what they are, brown balls, furry, have cute eyes and so on. They're just walking around, and they get kidnapped, and you help them. You make sure they get out of their prisons and everything, collecting diamonds as well over the course of time with the levels, etc. So I would say Croc is kind of like a Crash Bandicoot type of game, but more in a Mario 64 kind of vibe to it. But I still loved and adored it. So when I was younger, when I was playing this on PC, one of the things that I really took in mind, I usually tend to say, even though I went to a lot of different classes for swimming and so on, but I think I place Croc as one of those characters that actually taught me how to swim. So when you're underwater with Croc, you can either have the strokes, or you can just do the kicking with the legs like when you're crawling. And this was actually one of the things where I felt confident. I saw Croc doing it, so I thought, hey, I can do that too. So I started actually copying a lot of the swimming style that Croc had, and I implemented that in my own swimming style. So I started kicking a lot, and I did the breaststrokes and so on as well. So maybe it's just how I interpreted and how I thought I did it, but I really love and adore Croc for this. It really warms my heart. I always loved Croc as a character, and I have fond memories of the game, and those were actually all true when I actually sat down and played it on PlayStation 1 again. So yeah, it is so much of a blast. And considering looking at something that is a blast and looking into people that you look up to, one of the first big stars that actually joined in on the podcast, it was actually Magnus Paulsson, also known as Soul Eye. And this was on episode 12 for Äntligen Spelmusik. So it still was very early in my days, the first year and everything. And he made the music for the game known as VVVVVVV. And for people that don't know about that game, it's a Soul composer. I don't remember the name of this composer. Not composer, that person that created the game, the developer. But it's basically a game about your character, the captain of this spaceship, and he needs to find his crew, which has been scattered around on this world. So you work from left to right, and by pressing space, you shift the gravity. So if you're walking on the ground and you press space, you will start walking on the ceiling, going back and forth. And this is the full thing of this. And the reason why it's named VVVVVV is only to make the shape of spikes. And spikes is, of course, in this game, your worst enemy. But they're adding so many other functionalities and so on within this game. And the music is just plain amazing. So when I found Magnus Paulsson or Solai on Twitter, I reached out to him and said, hey, I really want to talk about your music and your opinion on what you have created. And what I really liked about that conversation, I think this was one of the first interviews where I had a really open discussion, and he was very honest about how bad it could actually get. And I love that honesty, that he was open to talk about it, that when you're working with something you really love, it's not always about having the best time of your life and so on. You actually can have a really bad time at the same time in all this, but still really, really nice. And that's what I loved about that open and honest conversation we had with that episode. It's not in my top 5, but it's I love all the episodes, but it's been hard selecting a top 5 episode that we talked about earlier. But having that honest opinion in it, and it's okay to say something incorrectly and so on, and still change your mind surrounding something, or being open that financially it's really hard making music for video games, etc. I think that was an important part in the podcast life, and important part for everybody to hear, that hey, everybody that works on these games, they actually struggle. That's life, because today with all the information going on online and so on, we're getting these bits and pieces where everybody's just super happy all the time. Everybody's posting something really, really neat, how they look and so on. Oh, look at me, I'm on a vacation, so on. But on the inside of what we're not seeing, there could be a whole other story in this. And I think it's important to talk about these things from time to time to bring everybody else a little bit back on Earth, because I think we're definitely floating away into space with certain things here in life. So, yeah. And considering the N64 versus PlayStation era here, for me, the PlayStation 1, I actually got one. I won it through a contest while I was playing. It was a contest where you were supposed to kill initial enemies in the beginning of the first area in the Atlantis game. So you had the little boomerang, and yeah, as soon as the guy who was running the competition saw that the last guy was down, he just clocked that time. And kids here were able to play as much as they want. I think I played like 3 or 4 times and were able to get. And I did that bunny jumping trick where instead of walking around and having to slow down and so on, I just jumped all the time in order to keep momentum. And it was so many things going on this, and it was crazy. But all of a sudden, I actually didn't know if I won it because I left before the contest was over. And all of a sudden, I actually just get a retrieve, like, hey, you can get the package. And my mother was actually the one who saw this the first time, and she actually got a little bit furious with me. It's like, hey, Chris, what the hell have you been ordering now? And I had no clue because I haven't ordered shit. So my mom and I actually took the car and we went to get this package. And I got a package, and I was still super confused what it was. And I opened up the package in the car, and we noticed, like, hey, it's a brand new slim version of the PlayStation 1. And then my mother understood, and I understood, but nobody understood from up until that point, and it's so crazy. But for me, after that, I actually didn't get too many games for the PlayStation 1. I had a couple of ones. I actually gotten way more ever since, but my sister took over the PlayStation 1. She had it for a lot of years, and when they were going to like toss it away, my father was like, no, you can just give it to Chris. And I got it back, and now I got some other games together with that, and I was super happy with the games that I actually got back, because one of those titles that I got back was Legend of the Dragoon, which was also one of those games I was supposed to pick for this episode, but in the end I actually just ran for the Demonizzi track for Croc, because I have a lot more memories to Croc than I have for Legend of the Dragoon. I still love that game because of elements and functionality that game has, but yeah, in the end, it falls down to my favorite little dinosaur, Croc. But on the top of favorites, there's another guy that I love to listen to so many times, and the track we're going to listen to is The Great Mighty Pooh, which is also a track that I got from the previous podcast, Spelklassikermusik. I loved and adored it, and this is also how I kind of found this new guy called Thunder Clash. And the game that the track is from is Conker's Bad Fur Day, which is an N64 game. Enjoy!
Mighty Pooh, I'm going to throw my shit at you. A huge supply of dish come from my chocolate starfish. How about some scat, you little twat? Surviving here, you don't seem to know which grade you're in. Sweet corn is the only thing that makes it through my rear. How do you think I keep this lovely grin? Have some more caviar.
Thunderclash conquers Bad Fur Day, the Great Mighty Pooh, and this is from the album Bits to the Wall from Thunderclash. Highly recommended to get these tracks. If not, listen in on Spotify. No, but Thunderclash is an absolute amazing dude, and I actually have a little bit of a story behind him specifically. And no, I have not interviewed this guy. I would love to talk to Thunderclash to get more to know more about his different projects and so on, because he's been working on a lot of different projects, working with video game music and so on. And he usually tends to apply these rock riffs onto everything. But I really love and adore that. He does it really, really good, and he does it in a style that makes him feel amazing. And of course, listening in on his voice as well is pure joy for me. I mean, I really love and adore Conquers Bad Fur Day. It's an N64 game, as I said. The Great Mighty Pooh's song in a boss battle is just purely fun and so on. I did not know about this game until I heard it on the other podcast. And of course, from time to time, I hear people talk well about Conquers Bad Fur Day, but it seems like this niche game that everybody haven't played this one, but everybody who did play it did actually have a good time with it. So I don't know if it's that niche or people just don't want to talk about it. I haven't heard somebody say it's a shitty game, unless it was the remake that came for, I think it was Xbox or something like that. But yeah, I love this track, and I love Thunderclash. So, my little story here on him. I was actually out on this local page where you can make offers and so on for video games. And I was on my hunt to, as usual, to find new Super Nintendo games. And I actually went in and gave a bid on one of these games that I found. And this was the game Bob, where you play a little yellow robot with weaponry and so on. And of course, I know the name behind Thunderclash. And when the game was sent, his name was on the package, because in Sweden you always have to write where it came from. So I saw that name, I saw where he was living, so I had like address and everything, and it feels so weird all of a sudden. And since I saw his email as well, I actually checked up his email and noticed that he had the picture of Thunderclash there. So I was like, holy crap, I bought a game, a Super Nintendo game from the actual Thunderclash. So I actually emailed him. It was the weirdest conversation ever in history of man. No, but I emailed him, asked him, like, are you this guy, and so on, because I just wanted confirmation that it was this guy. And he emailed back, like, hey, yeah, I'm this guy. And we had like an email going back and forth a little bit, and we talked a little bit. It was still very early. This was happening before I had the podcast, if I remember correctly, because I only knew him from the other podcast. If I'm fully correct. So I haven't actually talked to him since then. But we were talking, I gave him praise on his music and everything, thanked him for everything. And so weird things can happen everywhere, and that's what I love about this. But yeah, that kind of ends the era of N64 and PlayStation 1. So now we're going a little bit more handheld together with another era. We're going to DS and PlayStation 2. And for me, I was kind of late on the DS. I actually bought the 3DS and then played DS games on it, and especially those that were recommended. And one of these games were really, really standing out when it comes to DS, and that is the game Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. And I heard so many people talk about this game. I just knew that I definitely need to get this game, or else I will be the one weirded out by this. It is a puzzle game, so I felt like, hey, I like puzzle games. Maybe this could be something for me. And people have talked about the mechanics in this game, and I was actually a bit impressive by it. So I bought it, I played it a bit, and the rest of my story here will continue after we're listening in on the first track from the DS then. Ha! Leaving you hanging. We're going to listen to a white, lovely, lanky man, Cabanela, from the game Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. white, lovely, lanky man, Cabanela. This from Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, a DS game. The OST here was composed by the Japanese Masakazu Sugimori, and the game was developed by the Japanese company Capcom. I don't know how many Capcom games. This is like all like random out of fate coincidences. There have been so many Capcom games, as you notice here, and I actually got surprised myself when doing all the research and everything. It seems like I'm a Capcom boy. It seems so. But the game was released on Nintendo DS and on iPhone back in 2010. It was released on iPad in 2011, and lastly on Android in 2012. Shockingly, in 2023, I was actually surprised to see an updated version of this game, which was released on the PC, PS4, and on Xbox One and the Nintendo Switch. The game looks very much better, and it also comes in with a rearranged soundtrack. I actually haven't given that much of a thought, so right after this episode is launched, I will actually dive in, and look into this rearranged track to see what the differences are, etc. No, but I really love Ghost Trick. Ghost Trick was one of those games that are, story-wise, are really fun, mechanic-wise are really, really fun and puzzly, but at the same time, it actually took me a while to complete this game, because just like those longer games, you can kind of get a little bit stuck in a certain way of thinking, and in Ghost Trick, it is really, really good to think outside the box. But the story and the twist in this game, it is so good. So good. I definitely highly recommend everybody who likes a puzzle game, they need to play Ghost Trick. It is a must-have on your puzzle list. And you will most likely put it up on a top 3 right away. For me, it's definitely a top 3. I still play a lot of different kind of puzzle games and so on. Ghost Trick and The Room series is one of those games that are really up high on my list, where The Room is the biggest one. I would say Ghost Trick goes in a close second. But yeah, you basically play this dead person, Sissel, if I remember correctly is his name. And the whole game starts like, hey, that's me. I'm dead. And you will get jumped into action with the power to control objects. So you will take your soul and jump from object to object, because of course you can't live in your own dead body. And basically this little adventure, you will need to stop certain things from happen. So that's where the puzzle thing comes in. You will have a certain time in order to readjust and save people, so to speak, in order to also unlock your mystery. And Cabanela is one of those detectives you can see in this game. Every time he comes in this super nice white suit, he has a long scarf around his neck that is flying around every time he does something. And he does like this Elvis Presley thing where you maybe it's more Michael Jackson, to be honest. He just kicks out and slaps around and doing twists and turns. And he's just this over-the-top character, and I love him. So he's not super intrigued into the story itself, but he pops in from time to time and he tries to solve the crime while you're working around in the background trying to solve it as well. So yeah, definitely, since it's on handheld as well, I mean, it works so well. That's why I like this game. You work well with what you have, and since it's handheld, you can work with it everywhere. And I remember on the iPhone and iPad, you were able to play the first chapter for free, and then you could buy the second, third, and fourth chapter for this game in order to complete the game. But since I already owned it on the DS, since that's where I started with it, and then noticed on the iPhone, I actually played a little bit on the iPhone, and it still works really, really well. But yeah, highly recommended. If you like the music, you should definitely check in the game as well. And from here, I actually want to go with another testimonial here. We're getting closer to the generation here. We're going to play another track, another remix, and then we're going to go into my little PC era, which will be like the last kind of spec on everything. But let's actually go in and listen to another testimonial here, and this time from Calvin Woodruff, listener to the podcast. This podcast helped me through some super long flights and runs! My favorite episode was with Jonas Turner, who is one of my favorite composers. I haven't been watching for long, but I can't wait for 200 more episodes to come. Calvin. thank you so much for the testimonial. I really liked the episode together with Jonas Turner as well. That one felt like it went so much more into the technical parts and so on. And the soundtrack itself, it feels like when you're playing the game that we talked about for that specific episode, when you listen to the music itself, it sounds so like you're having a bad trip. But when you're playing the game, it is so suitable, and that's why I love that episode so much. If you take it out of the context by listening only on the sound, only on the episode, you might feel like, oh, what kind of experience is this? But if you actually take time and play that game, you will definitely enjoy that soundtrack. So it gives a little bit of perspective, and I don't know how many times I talk about that in that episode, but please beware. And if you love those tracks, you will definitely love the game itself. So definitely check that out. And also, yet again, thank you so much for the testimonial, Calvin. So moving on to the next one. This is also one of those games that really just blew me away. It really blew me away. The soundtrack is, I would say, kind of an acquired taste, but for me who loves Japan and so on, it really like tugs on some of my heartstrings on certain areas, but it's really a little bit more on the down low. But I took one that I really enjoyed. So we're going to listen to Dororo's theme from the game Blood Will Tell, Tezuka Osamu's Dororo. Blood Will Tell, Tezuka Osamu's Dororo, and this was the track Dororo's theme from PlayStation 2. The OST here was composed by the Japanese Yasutaka Hatade and Shinichiro Sota and Masayoshi Ishii. As everybody knows, I'm just really bad at reading Japanese names. I'm trying my best here, and I still haven't learned in 7 years, apparently. It's crazy. Anyway, the game was developed here by the Japanese company Sega and released exclusively on the PlayStation 2 in 2004. This was what was it, 2019? No, not 19. I think it's 2017. Around that point in time, I actually got this game. I don't know exactly how I got it. I think I bought it in a bundle or something like that. And I just put it in and in my PS2 and played it a little bit. And I was like, this is a real solid game. Didn't think much of the music at that point in time, but I thought it was a really good game. So I actually reached out to my dear old friend Joachim, SPE, and said like, hey, do you want to make like an episode or something like that on this game? He haven't heard about it either, so I just invited him over. We plugged in my Elgato, so we could basically play on my TV and still record it on my PC. And we just talked over it, making a dub over what we were playing. And I don't know if I still have that video somewhere. I don't even remember if I posted it somewhere, but it was planned to have some sort of review release over at Videospelsklubben, where I've always been with my podcast. And yeah, even though I haven't completed this game, this is one of those games I also really want to play and complete. In Blood Will Tell, it follows the story of Dororo, which is also a manga from the beginning. It has an anime as well on the topic, following the story somewhat. But this game, they made their own kind of take on it as well, with a story and everything. And yeah, from what I understand, the story is quite big. It's like a legend, from what I understand, in Japan. But yeah, in this game, you will basically take control of this samurai whose body has been taken by demons. This is not Dororo. Dororo is another character within this game series that you will meet quite early in the game, who is a small, I think he's a boy, if I remember correctly. And it's a thief. So you will have this combination about this little Dororo thief and this samurai, which I don't remember the name on. And since demons have taken your body, the only thing basically left is your will to live. And there was this magician who found you when you were just a wee boy, where the demons have basically taken all the organs and everything. So you're basically just a husk with a strong willpower to live, and almost nothing else. But he creates these prosthetics for you, and you start out as this, I would say around a little bit more middle age. No, I would say younger than middle age, so a young adult. And yeah, that's basically it. In the beginning, you will start out, you will walk in your kimono, you will have a samurai sword and everything, and everything in this game is black and white, because with the prosthetics, you can only see the world, but you cannot see it in color. So one of the first bosses you beat in this, one of the first demons you beat in this game, will actually have your eyes. So the game will turn into color. And over time, as you beat all these, if I remember correctly, it's 99 demons you need to beat in order to reclaim your body. That's your mission within this game at the beginning of this game. And you will basically fight. It's a really nice juggling kind of God of War / Devil May Cry type of game. You can juggle around, but in your knees of this character, you have like a mortar, but also a minigun. In your arms, you can actually toss off your lower arms and have like watashi blades, like small daggers, like half-length blades. But you can also put them on, and you can go with the wider samurai sword attacks as well. And you have all this athleticism and so on, but over time you're getting, it's almost like an RPG to some extent. As you collect more of your body parts all the time, you will get more stamina, you will get more strength and so on. And it's really, really nice to follow up on this. One of those PS2 games that really, really blew me away. Great controls, great story, and I just want more. So, with that said, I think it's time, since I want to speed it up a little bit. We're getting in 2 hours, just me talking here. So, let's speed it up a little bit. We're heading in for the next remix, which will end the era of the DS and PlayStation 2 here. So, let's give it applaud for Pixel Pirates joining in. And this is their track from Final Fantasy X, which is for the PlayStation 2. And this is Welcome to Pixel Land. Yes, and that was from my dear old friend Pixel Pirates with Tabanta and his friend I don't remember the name of. I'm sorry. I'm not friends with both of them, so that could be the main reason why. But yeah, this was Final Fantasy X, Welcome to Pixelland, and this is an OC remix, which means everybody can actually go in and download this by themselves over at OC Remix. But for people that want to listen in more of Pixel Pirates, they have their Bandcamp and so on, but also they are available with their music over on Spotify. Totally forgot to say that for everything. And of course, I try to provide all the links and everything where people can download and support the composers for all the music that we find. So I'm sorry if I haven't said that for everybody before, but it felt a little bit more personal now that I know the guy personally behind this. And I already gone through the story, how it went down when me and him made our episode. But I think it's time, since we are getting closer to the last... So that ended the era with DS and PlayStation 2. We're going into my so-called PC Master Race era. We will go with and talk about different games. We will go through remixes and so on. So let's actually close in a little bit of the testimonials here, the last ones that we have. So we start with Martyrus. He was a guest, first of all, in the episode with Gameable Audio on the 15th. We were talking about summertime. And here's his testimonial. I was introduced to the show through another podcast called Rhythm and Pixels. I often hear he's mentioned as a contributor and later learned of his podcast. Eventually, I had the opportunity to be a guest on the show, and I'll admit, some nervousness and perhaps some fumbling here and there. But I enjoyed my time on his show. I hope to return, and this time with a little bit more confidence and enthusiasm. Those are some of the things that impressed me about Chris and his show. His confidence in presenting the information, the music, and his guests. And how exciting he is for his material. Oh, exciting, not excited is the word I'm looking for here. One day, I'll reach 200, but for now, I wish Chris and Gameable Audio my best wishes, and you and the show to continue for another 200 episodes. Martyrus. I'm getting the chills here. This is not the first time I read through this. This is actually like third or fourth, but I'm still getting goosebumps and chills from this. Thank you so much, Martyrus. The words are really, 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 really touching. The last one I have is actually also from yet another guest from the podcast, and this is Dan Poole, who guested in the episode of Gameable Audio 38, the Dan Poole special that was made at Nordic Game Conference, the event down in Malmö where business to business is happening between everything. And I went down there in order to basically talk to composers and artists, as you know, the 4 episodes we had during the summer here. So his words in his testimonial that he has is, Gameable Audio with Chris is one of the most positive things I do with my time. Chris is so knowledgeable, so kind, and brings up super interesting topics when it comes to games and game audio. Highlights are and searching for a little known composers and celebrating the golden oldies as well as up and upcoming legends. Chris is always putting a smile on my face with his entertaining and energetic episodes, and I always find I learn something new or find some new artists or game to check out. Thanks, Chris, for putting on a great show. Dan. I'm still getting the chills, man. Come on, you guys. You're too kind, really. No, everybody who sent in an audio file or sent in a testimonial, thank you so much for your time and effort to write these to me. I feel very humbled and I'm touched. I'm really touched here. So for people who are listening in on this and still want to give a little shout out and write a little bit about the podcast, if you didn't have time to do it for the testimonials, feel free to do so. I would love to hear a little bit more about what you guys think. And if you haven't said hi in a comment field, feel free to say hi and just like, hey, I'm a listener. It would be so much fun to get to know everybody who's listening in on this show. And before I'm like diving in and we're listening to more episodes and how I evolved over the time, let's actually just point out a little bit about the story and all the guests. Out of the 200 recorded episodes for this podcast, actually 62 episodes have been guested by somebody. And 13 out of these 62 episodes have been guested by good friends of mine. So looking at the 200 episodes, if we divide these by 4, we get the number 50. And if we take the 62 guests minus the 13, which are my friends and so on, 49 episodes have been guested by actual composers or artists, getting me really close to the goal that I had for this podcast, as I wanted to at least make sure that I have a guested episode at least every 4th episode. So I'm goddamn close to having exactly what I wanted, and I'm just super happy that I'm able to get to talk to so many composers and artists about their work within video game music. It really is. In all honesty, I didn't believe that was possible. For me, these guys, girls, women, everything, they're superstars. They're so amazing in so many planes and fields. It's crazy. I look up to these people. They bring me happiness listening to either something very emotional or something very happy in music. And I think it's important for us to show that appreciation, because I don't think we do that. We can love and share one of these tracks, but have you ever gone online and said thank you to the actual composer, like tagging them or something like that? I don't think a lot of people have done that, and I've been better at doing this over the course of time as well now, doing my podcast, making sure they are getting heard. That's what I love about this now. It is crazy what's happening out there. So before we move on to listen in on more tracks and so on, let me talk a little bit about PC. I love PC. It was actually my brother that got me into this. I have a half brother on my mother's side that I look up to as a father, and it's so much fun to have this guy in my life. We don't talk that much today. We usually just reach out to each other if we want to talk about video games, or anybody of us needs some help with something. That's kind of how it works. And I mean, he has his family, and I'm doing my random shenanigans all the time. But he's the guy who actually got me into PC. We had a PC quite early on in the family. It was one of those subvention kind of thing going on for companies, so technology can come out and be in the normal homes of the Swedes. So my father was able to actually get a computer, a Dell computer, back in the day. And we didn't play too much on it in the beginning. It was mostly for work and so on. But over time, as my brother, who is 8 years older than me, got into video games and so on together with our cousins and friends of theirs, they actually started having LAN parties and so on. And that got me way into video games. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to play the games they did and so on. I felt like I was always there. But the thing is here, I actually only had the time to meet my half-brother every second weekend. It wasn't for a full week even. It was only for on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then on Sunday he went away again. And all the rest of the time he lived and had with his father where he lived. So for me, it was always this emotional roller coaster for each and every weekend, because I had such a blast playing the video games together with him. And of course, one of the greatest games that I already talked about is Diablo 1. One of those games I played online, I played together with him. We figured out how you can cheat the game and so on. And it was just random shenanigans all the time. But I loved that game. So as a representative to my early days for video gaming that I remember from this era, we're going to listen to Diablo 1. And it's a remix, original kind of song called Greetings, the Kane rap. I hope you'll enjoy this track as much as I have always done, as long as I've owned this track on my computer.
My name's Deckard Cain, and I come from Tristram. If you're looking for Diablo, then you just missed him. If you find old Griswold, then you can take him down, but you'll get no reward till you come back to town. Thanks for my life. I'll identify your stuff, but if you choose to journey on, then it's gonna get tough. Greetings, friend. Here's the road to the east. You'll find that it's blocked because Andario's a beast. Greetings, greetings. Greetings. Stay a while and listen. Charcy can shield you if you have a lot of cash. If you're all out of room, you can stick it in your stash. My name is Deckard Cain, and I've come on out to greet you. So sit your ass and listen, or I'm gonna have to beat you. If I don't know the answer, then go ask Mala. She's a funky little broad that looks like a koala. My homies were destroyed, but I carry on with the help of young Anya, who's no Amazon. Greetings, greetings. Can't touch this, can't touch this. Can't touch this, can't touch this, can't touch this. Can't touch this. Greetings. Stay a while and listen.
Stay a while and listen. No, I think everybody know that I said Diablo 1, and I noted that, hey, this is from Diablo 2, because I noted down incorrectly. So yeah, still Diablo series, however, I mean, come on. Show this guy some slack. I've been recording for more than 2 hours now. Well, in real life, I've been recording for almost 5 hours right now, because reasons, and editing and everything takes time. But yeah, usually when I make these episodes by myself, I just do them from point A to point B, so I'm just going through, making adjustments and so on, live recording everything basically from start to finish. So it's not just like one big, massive thing. Anyway, I'm just rambling on. When it comes to this one, this soundtrack was composed by the American Matt Ullman, and of course, since I wanted to talk a little bit more about PlayStation 1, I took the information from Diablo 1. So the game here was, as many people know, developed by the American company Blizzard North, and was released on PC in 1997 and Mac and PS1 in 1998. And since I wanted to talk about Diablo 1 specifically, and was due to the fact that it is PlayStation 1, is that the fact in Diablo 1 is one of the few in the beginning, well, not a few, now it's released everywhere, it's not few anymore, majority, but Diablo 1 was released on PlayStation 1, it's insane. Diablo 2 never released on console. So when Diablo was released on PlayStation 1, it was through my cousin I was able to try this game out. And it was basically, he was living close to my grandparents on my father's side, and they had all his PS1 games. So I remember that I wanted to borrow Diablo from him. But in this case, he wasn't even at home. And so my grandmother instead was like, okay, you can borrow this. And since they wanted to remember that, hey, this is borrowed, they had these stickers on with their name and everything. So they put the sticker on that one, then I got the game, and then I was able to play it at home on my PS1 that I won. As if you remember that I said that. No, but it was so much fun, because at this point in time when this was happening, I wasn't playing Diablo 1 on PC anymore. I wanted to try it out on PlayStation, since, hey, I want a PlayStation 1. I'm able to play it. But the biggest reason why I wanted to play it on PlayStation 1 is due to the fact that here in Sweden and Nordic, Scandinavian countries, the game was actually translated. Not just in text, but in audio as well. So all the characters within this game were talking in Swedish, and it's so freaking fun. It is amazing how bad and good it is at the same time. Having Griswold being a guy from Gothenburg, for example. Super happy person, basically. No, but for me, going back, thinking about all these different kind of PC games and so on, it feels like I have this endless amount of information and knowledge of different kind of games that I played throughout time and so on. Sometimes it's hard for me to remember correctly, but I see them so vividly, so I can talk very well about them. But if I go back and actually look into gameplay of the games, I think I might have, from time to time, very incorrect pictures of them. And this is also one of the reasons why I don't like replaying some games, especially if we're looking at it today. So one of the reasons is the game Oni, made by Bungie, for example, who made the Halo series later. One of those games I love to play on PC. I actually bought it on PlayStation 2, but I haven't played it again since. And I don't want to play it, I feel, because I think I might destroy the nostalgia I have for the game and what I loved with it. But I think it's time for us to listen in a little bit more on how I've developed, because now as we're going through the PC games, I think we're going to be more hectic about looking back on the episodes that I've done over the time and see how I evolved, as my taste in video games have evolved as well. So let's listen to what it sounded like I think it's 4 years ago or something like that. So yeah, we're going to listen a bit to a Swedish episode where I talked about Kinect games.
Känslan av att dansa som coola kids, inte dansa som en ADHD-unge på typ energidricka, som DDR oftast kanske får folk att tänka på när de väl ser någon dansa runt på det. Men det är fruktansvärt, det är liksom finkänsligt och imponerande att bara se folk vara riktigt jäkla duktiga på DDR-spel. Och de bara flyter över den här danspaddan. Det är svårt att förklara hur mycket jag uppskattar ändå bara kunna se, även om jag själv är helt klipps värdelös och möjligtvis kanske skulle kunna bli bra på det. Men jag blir så jäkla imponerad i alla fall när det väl kommer till den.
Yeah, and in this clip, I was definitely talking about kids having ADHD and dancing around on DDR platforms here. No, but for me, I love the Kinect. I had this small little challenge where I review games and so on. I totally quit doing any sort of workout and only used the Kinect as a way of getting training. And through this, it was all the different kind of games and so on. And I forced myself to play to play the Kinect at least 1 hour per day. But during this test, I actually got injured and was unable to play a certain week. But I was back again soon after. And in the end, with the whole full project and so on, yes, it actually worked well. But the only thing I kind of felt I missed out on was having a better way of getting cardio. There are some games that are focused on cardio and running, but it didn't really help that much, to be honest. Doing high knees when you're running in your home, sending all those shockwaves down to the neighbor below, I think is not the best way of getting the cardio in. It's so much better to just go out for a run, etc. No, but I really love and adore Kinect. I love and adore all these kind of weird-ass shit peripherals that you can have for video games. For example, for the Super Nintendo, I have a baseball bat that was only released in the US. Freaking love it. You have the bazooka. Well, it's more normal because kids love weapons, so meh. But yeah, going through different kind of things. For me, I know a lot of people did not like the Wii. I love the Wii to sit there and swing around in the sofa, because a lot of people did not like it because they were getting sweaty when playing the games, or they felt a bit retarded, maybe, I guess, playing. But yeah, I love and adore all these things. I love the quirkiness of playing video games, and especially moving into utilizing your own body. That's why I love and adore VR games now, for example, and just getting more and more different kind of genres into the mix. Is not just being puzzle games and not just being rhythm games or shooter games, for example. Just getting that bigger and wider thing. So I really like, but we'll see about that. But something else I really liked. Over the time, I usually tend to say to people that, hey, I always identify myself as a multi-genre type of player. I never really got stuck in playing just only shoot 'em ups. I never got stuck in playing only strategy games and so on. I was one of those kids that from 1 hour I could play an FPS shooter, and the next hour I could play a real-time strategy game, and the next one play a puzzle game. And I loved and adore that. I love having the opportunity to be able to do so as well. And I know a lot of other people are so into getting in one specific genre and so on. And I think it's kind of sad not to have that open mind. Of course, games are hard, and they will always be hard if you don't put the hours into them. So for me, I don't like open world games because they take a long time to play, and most of it is just me running around. I can run around in a corridor in an FPS game and be done with that game in 2 hours. Well, 6, 7, almost 8 hours now. So, but still, my point is, I don't need to put 60 hours where 40 hours is just me traveling. And that's why I think, for me, open world games are the hardest genre for me to get into, because you always put a lot of other things into it. And it's due to the fact of having loss of time. But on the topic of loss of time, there is one game that I put a lot of hours into playing over and over again. So we're gonna enjoy the main menu theme from Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Heroes of Might and Magic 3, and this is one of those games that have created so many friendships, to be honest. So many people have nostalgia to this game, so many people love and adore the music, the story, and everything. For me, I love and adore this game. I've almost exclusively have been playing only like free scenarios. I've not played a single campaign mission whatsoever. I think I started it up like at one point, but no, I never really put more time into it. And this main theme, for people who knows about strategy games, knows about this track, this main menu music for Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Even if you haven't played this game, you have somebody that knows this game and that have recommended this. So most people have heard this track. So it's so much fun when this track is played, and so many people are getting like goosebumps and so on, and remembering this game with love. And it really saddens me to know that for every game that released after the third game has actually become worse. So with Heroes of Might and Magic 4, it was still okay, but still not there. And 5 was an absolute travesty, to be honest. And for me, playing the first and the second game was a nice compilation, but the third game, it was like the pinnacle of strategy within its genre. And it was so good. Everything was so much fun. I could play this for hours. And yes, every match of this game did go and take hours. And one of my fondest memories on these is playing hot seat. That means you have multiple players playing on the same computer. And me and my buddies, we were always like, when you end turn, he was like, "Hey, Steve, it's your turn." And then Steve comes in and plays. And then he's like, "Hey, David, it's your turn." And then everybody just round robbing in the computer. And every time you went in and sit back at the computer, the first thing you need to do is actually look around on everything you have explored basically on the map. Because if you're sitting in on your own PC and playing online, for example, you will see when people take action. You will see those character moves. But since you're not in that room when that happens, you actively need to check through everything. And I love the time when you're going in, and then all of a sudden you just hear from the room, you're screaming. It's like, "David, you need to get in." And then David knows, like, Chris is attacking me. And then you're having that battle and so on, and it's an absolute blast. So many laughs has been had on this, and so many craziness have been happening in Heroes of Might and Magic 3. And you also have the spin-off series where you have Might and Magic, where you walk around and just having like a first-person screen and walking around in a world. Like the old Goldie games, you know? But yeah, I think the next time we're going to listen to yet another little episode, and this was a special episode. Well, first of all, I didn't actually say the episode number for the Connect. So the Connect number was episode 85 from Äntligen Spelmusik, and now we're going to listen to. We're getting closer here, so we're going to episode 124. Sorry, from Äntligen Spelmusik, and this was a topic on Winifred Phillips.
Det enda God of War-spelet jag har faktiskt testat var det till PSP. Och där egentligen så låg jag typ mest skiten ur cracken och sen var jag så här, inte mitt typ av spel just nu. Men det här är i alla fall en spelserie som jag kommer ta mig an allt mer med tiden. Just nu så känner jag att när det kommer till originalspelen kanske de är lite utdaterade. Jag har ju faktiskt nu när jag tänker på det, jag har ju faktiskt spelat igenom God of War när han är då nu i Norden helt enkelt. Nordisk mytologi och det.
And there we had it. A small little like cut from the episode when I talk about Winifred. And in this segment, I was specifically talking about God of War, as Winifred Phillips has worked on. I think it was the first one. And yeah, I haven't really played that much. I talked about that I had an emulator on a PSP, and I played Ascensions, God of War Ascensions for that one. And I played a little bit in the beginning, and I felt like, oh, it's not the right time for me. But sooner or later, I will grab this series. I will play through it and so on. And right here at the end, I was talking about, like, yeah, now that I remember, I also have actually played God of War in the new one where he's in the Northern mythology. And yeah, that's kind of it. It's not more, it's not less, but we can still hear me breathing a whole lot in this cut, and I feel like it becomes so much easier to understand how the mic works and everything. So I hope in this episode, since I'm not gonna go through and cut all the different breathing parts and so on, I don't think I'm doing it in the same kind of manner or sense anymore that like I did before, because before it was so easy to spot them. And today it is not as equal. Could just be because I have a new setup and that actually works better. I don't know. But when we're talking a little bit about overdosing and loving something, and the next track we're going to listen to is from a game called Carmageddon. One of those games that I really, really loved and adore. I didn't have any full understanding of the music in this game. I played this on LAN parties a lot when I grew up. So when I noticed this track name, I was like, this track name is actually, it haven't been so much in time and so on point that it is today. So we're listening to Carmageddon 3, TDR 2000. So this is the third game. And the track name is called Diet Coke Overdose. Carmageddon 3 TDR 2000. This was Diet Coke Overdose, and the OST here was composed by an unknown person or artist because I could not find a single information about this. It's called Des Tong. And the game here was developed by the Australian company Taurus Games and was released exclusively on PC back in 2000. And for me, this game was an absolute blast on the LAN parties in this point in time. We played this like crazy. And for people that doesn't know about regulations here in Sweden or in Europe, when it comes to these type of bloody games and so on, in Carmageddon you were driving races with cars that had weapons on them and so on, and you picked up power-ups and so on. And there were pedestrians on the streets, just like a GTA game. And when it comes to Germany specifically, they have a lot more kind of rules surrounding these kind of things with blood and so on in video games. So in Carmageddon here in Europe, all the pedestrians are actually zombies. And when you drive onto them, they don't bleed the same way they do in the human form. They actually have green blood. So a lot of times when it comes to video games in Sweden, we have remade the characters, or we have enemies that either have green blood, blue blood, or they explode. A great example for understanding could be the Contra series. Here in Europe, it's called Probotector, where the characters that look like Rambo and so on, they are robots here. And everything is exploding everywhere. And still screaming like they do. But yeah, there's a lot more explosion going on in our Probotector than it is in the Contra series. I guess I've been talking for a little bit too long. I'm starting to go a little crazy here with my mind. So let's dive into the next, not track. We're going to listen to another episode through time, and we're at the 4th year anniversary. So we're soon like 3 years behind here on this. I only have 2 more clips to play that I picked, and this is also from Äntligen Spelmusik, and this was episode 154.
He then followed up with some music for Zol Exodus, Mutant Muds, and Bomb Monkey in 2012. More voiceover for the game Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded, which is a remake of the first game, and this was released back in 2013. Then You Must Build a Boat in 2015, also a great freaking game, just requesting everybody to just try it out, maybe. It's on the phone as well.
Yeah, you heard it, folks. It's on the phone as well. Go grab it while it's hot. No, but it's amazing. Now we can hear I've moved over to the final game music part of the podcast as well. It was around that point with Winifred, if I remember correctly. I did about, I think if I remember correctly, it's about 30, 40 episodes with finally game music. So looking through the feed, everybody can know when I kind of transcend over, because I've renamed all the episodes to finally game music. So they're easy to spot and easy to know exactly. So if an international listener is joining in, they're not going to be alienated of me talking Swedish all the time until they were like, okay, when is this happening in English? So right now I can always tell people, like, yeah, if you see the title in English, the episode itself will be in English as well. So no worries to be afraid on that point and time. And the last kind of number I have is a newer Gameable audio, where we headed over to the newer concept of the show. But before that, I think it's time for us to jump into another game. And this time, I know a lot of people kind of like this series, but the spin-off games are not that common I don't hear enough of it. And this specific game that we're going to listen to a track from, I have almost like never heard anybody talk about it. So this feels like one of those hidden gems that I freaking loved and adored. And I feel like more people should have played it back in the day. I don't think it has grown well today, but I love the music and I love the game on it. So let's enjoy for some Lemmings Paintball with the track Nice Mood. Nice mood from the game Lemmings Paintball. And for me, I really love and adore the music from this game specifically, because most of these tracks in this game brings me really back to like the demo scene modular kind of vibe. So it feels really, really good, to be honest, listening in back on the Lemmings Paintball soundtrack. And the OST here was composed by the British Mike Clark. The game was developed by the British company Visual Sciences and released exclusively on PC back in 1996. But this was one of those games, I think, if I remember correctly now, I think this was like a giveaway game on one of those like PC Gamer, PC Gamer magazines where you get the discs and so on. They always had some shareware. They always had some demos. And if I remember correctly, Lemmings Paintball was one of those games you got on a CD, and I played it. That's how I might be wrong, but that's how I kind of remember it. And in this game, this is like one of those isometric shooting kind of games. You will have one lemming and has a gun with paint in it, and you will walk around going between covers and so on, and you will shoot down all the other lemmings covering their bases and so on. And you will... I remember a small flag. I might be mistaken on that one too, though. But I haven't played this game since I was a young kid, but I still remember this game fondly. I really liked this game because it was very different. For me, I did not like the original Lemmings, where you just gave the Lemmings different jobs and so on. I was so much more into the other games with Lemmings. And of course, there are a couple of spin-off ones. I know Lemmings Paintball, and then you have... I think it's Lomax for the PS1 is also like one of those spin-off where you play a lemming, a small little adventure game. Small. I think it's pretty big though, but it's a good game. I've seen it. It seems to be a hard game, but graphic-wise, it looks absolutely amazing. No, but for Lemmings, I have a hard time identifying great with these little guys, little lemmings, but they are adorable nonetheless. And I know a lot of people have great memories to the games of Lemmings, but also a little bit to the music. And I don't really know what type of person likes Lemmings the most, and I don't think that's important either, though, now that I think of it. But yeah, I don't have too much else to add when it comes to Lemmings. I've actually saved one little happy parody remix kind of on a game for the last, but we still have one more episode to go through and listen back on. And this is the 8th episode of the Gameable Audio, so enjoy this little run back. Not so far ago. Not so long ago. That's what we're looking for.
And yeah, what do we actually think about water levels? Considering like the major thought of people. People really dislike water levels. But one thing that really comes to mind is when it comes to the music of water levels. I'm just excluding everything going on with what's going on specifically for the water levels themselves. Of course, everybody can think what they would like on water levels. I personally kind of like them. They bring something new. Of course, some of the mechanics of moving around feels a bit sluggish, and that kind of could theoretically destroy the experience of the game, basically.
And yeah, there we go. We're having a little bit of a talk about water levels not so long ago. But yeah, this has been my journey, to be honest, going through everything with the podcast. From the beginning, as I was doing it in Swedish, moving over to something to reach a little bit broader, to reach an international market. Initially, I've always been interested in doing the podcast in English, but I felt more confident starting out making the podcast in Swedish. But over time, I started noticing, like, yeah, I want more and more composers, and the Swedish market and people understanding Swedish are limited. So I started noticing that, okay, if I don't start doing the podcast in English, it's going to be hard for me to get composers to join in to talk to. So that was actually one of the greater motivations for me to like, hey, Chris, you need to move over to English. And I actually asked my listeners at that point in time, like, how would you feel if I did it in English? And most of my Swedish ones, not most of them, but some actually reached out and said, hey, I'm listening to Swedish. It's so much easier. I find it hard to follow up on English. And I definitely understand those things, but for me, what I lose versus what I gained, in this case, actually weighted up a little bit to move over to English. I feel more confident in English now. I also like to talk in English more. But at the same time, it is so much easier for me to recommend episodes to everybody if they are in English. So that's like one of the main reasons why I really wanted to move over to this forum and doing it in English. And over time, I've been so much inspired by different other podcasts and so on, and even inviting other podcasts friends to, like Martyrs, for example. It actually is a lot of fun. It's not possible if I did that in Swedish. I wouldn't be able to have Martyrs, or if I did like one spin-off episode. But Martyrs wouldn't be as excited to join in if I didn't do it in English. That's what I'm basically saying. So when we're talking about being inclusive in things like that, I think the last track of this week will kind of pan out and point to prove a little bit to what I'm striving at with the podcast and so on, building a community. This is going to be a Minecraft parody, and it points out because Minecraft is all about getting people together, making something creative. So this is the Jogcasts, and the song we're going to listen to is How Do I Craft This Again?
Smile, cause you've almost forgot how to mine. It's just been such a long time, and every time you're denied with all the crafting recipes you've tried. I'm sure it's in God's with some leather highs. But now the wiki page is loading slow. It could be wood or mossy cobblestone. What's the recipe? I just don't know. I'm all alone, asking, how do I craft this again? How do I craft this again? How do I craft this again? I'm all alone. How do I craft this again? Trying to guess how to make an anvil. So one in town and I've got a bag full of different ores I collected down in the mine. Am I just wasting my time? Then to my uttermost surprise, I can quite believe my pixel eyes. I found it after 7,000 tries. Well, that's a recipe I didn't know. I need some friends on here that I can show. I would not want it all on my own. I'm all alone, learning. How do I craft this again? How do I craft this again? How do I craft this again? I'm all alone. How do I craft this again? Now I'm a pro, you can come to me anytime about new carpets and dyes or baking new pumpkin pies. Fireworks for lighting up the skies, tripwires for catching evil spies. Now all the noobs are thinking out my mind.
How do I craft this again?
I know.
How do I craft this again?
I know.
How do I craft this again?
I know.
How do I craft this again?
I know. Now there isn't anything that I don't know. Plus sticks with strings and craft yourself a bow. I'll up the guidance if you're up in slow. You're all asking, how do I craft this again? How do I craft this again? How do I craft this again?
Yeah, how do I craft this again? Minecraft parody by the Yogcast, and this is a parody of Owl City's When Can I See You Again, which was also a track that was prominent and shown or sung inside the movie Wreck-It Ralph. So it has a little bit more of a reference to video game, in my opinion, because I love Wreck-It Ralph. It's a fun little story. I think it was Pixar that made that one. I'm a little bit unsure, but I really liked that video. Or movie. And the second one was also pretty good, in my opinion. I liked it. I wished we got more time for Sonic, though, in that game. I remember seeing a trailer and Sonic was, like, shown almost as a main character And I was like, yeah, we get to see Sonic in a movie. And yeah, all we got in the end was a poster. Yay. But it is what it is. I mean, I can't say too much on it, right? No, but I love the Yogcast doing this one. Yogcast, we'll listen to so many different songs from this. A lot of you people might already know Digga Digga Hole and so on. But they have their own kind of channel. You can find them on YouTube. They will have their own little podcast and so on. And from time to time, you can see these parody songs that they do. And they're really well done and so on. Yeah, and one thing also as a small memory on this, over the course of time with the podcast, I actually been more involved with the local things here. So I actually joined in on an event called Nykon, it's a Nyköping Convent. And there people could play video game, some video games, VR, for example, board games, figure games, and so on, card games. And I usually have been having my hands in this event every time. And those 2 times that I've been more as a sponsor partnership together with the event, I've actually done like a full-on quiz surrounding video game music and so on. And how do I craft this again? This specific song was actually in one of those quizzes. So it was so much fun. And as I said before, the track, it's all about building the community. How do I craft this again? In the beginning, we don't know. Like, I didn't know anything about music. Over time, I've been trying. I've been doing research. I've been talking to composers and so on. And now I might be the pro, to be honest. No, seriously, don't. I'm not pro whatsoever. No, but in all sense of matter, I love what I'm doing. I really hope I will be able to fix up 200 more episodes at least. But considering all the new upcoming things, we have so many more composers I'm going to talk to that I'm still planning in. There's still way more people I would like to talk to that is not necessarily composers even. Joining in on other podcasts, trying to create this ecosystem of people that love VGM and video games to talk, share, and have a good time, basically. That's what I would like to get. That's where I want to strive for and where I want to go. And I hope everybody who's listening in on this want to do the same. Either if you don't want to join my community, you're joining your own community where you feel you have a place and so on, and enjoy the time you spend there, having a good time, making yourself happy. So with that, I want to thank, that was the last song for this week. 16 tracks, me talking about a lot of different shenanigans. It's been insane. There's nothing else in my document for me to read. I've been doing this for almost 3 hours, talking into the mic. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening in till the end. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you will join in on other episodes. But if you want more right away, there's nothing I can do to help you with that right now. But for information right now, before I do the usual ending, I am planning to have a spin-off podcast where I talk a little bit more about video games and so on, but also a little bit about the music still. And that extra podcast will be available on Patreon. So everybody who's in on Patreon will be able to listen to these episodes. These will not have a sturdy kind of schedule or something. They will be more spontaneous and so on. I will be talking to a lot of friends, even composers and so on as well that I know of, and we would like to just be more relaxed in the structure that I have here. So I hope more people will like to support me and my work with the podcast, and on that other end also get that extra. Even the smallest little support will give you access to the podcast, that spin-off podcast as well. And every little dime helps as well, not just me, but also composers, because even for this episode, I'm still purchasing music for each and every track that I am able to, and I'm trying to give each and every composer a good sense of money in that sense. So usually they can sell a track for just $1 and so on, but I usually tend to give like $2 or $3 when I'm making a purchase, because we need to collectively support these composers for making the awesome music that we are listening to. So I'm always making sure to give what I can, of course, but I don't want to ruin myself or anybody else. But anyway, I am tired right now. thank you all for joining in. So, other episodes of the Gameable Audio, you'll find those on our homepage, videospelsklubben.se, Spotify, or in your closest podcast app. Feel free to follow and comment on one of our social medias, either on Facebook or on Instagram. Just search for Gameable Audio, and you'll find me there. You can also support this podcast for future content upgrades and quality upgrades, but for future reference, we're gonna support more future composers, so think about becoming a Patreon. The awesome current backers that we have today is Daniel Onemark, Lars Schenström, Titti Schenström, Kevin Wikström, and Mike Björkholm. Thank you so much for supporting me and my work yet again, and been supporting me for such a long time as well. You guys have been awesome, and everybody else who've been supporting me on Patreon and cancel their purchases. Thank you so much still for all the support you've been able to give to me. It's been an honor for being the one you wanted to support, etc. And links where you can either buy and support all the music that we'll listen to from the composers behind the music will be found in our main post at videospelsklubben.se. And the next episode theme is gonna be Cozy Game Special, and we're getting another composer joining in for that one, and it's none other than Samantha van der Sluis. And I definitely hope I didn't murder that last name. It's a bit special, and I hope Samantha will teach me how to say it when we are recording that episode. And I hope you guys are excited as I am, because I've been doing a little bit of a teaser over on Discord about the soundtrack that I'm specifically going to talk a little bit about. And we will see what type of tracks we're getting from Samantha in the upcoming episode. And yeah, as always, since I didn't specify this before, but do specify it every time, the podcast theme music was composed by the amazing Thor Myrdal as usual. So big thank you to everybody who's been able to support me, send links and everything, everybody who's helped me out, find composers, to making the amazing jingles that we have for this podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And with that said, take care, everybody. See you all guys next time.